What do you see when you look in the mirror? For most, it's just a normal everyday occurrence. However, transgender people may not see the reflection of who they are or how they feel about themselves inside. The person staring back at them in the mirror is estranged and often hated. Now it's time to get to know some of the brave people who have taken the effort to share their true reflection of the individual inside. The stories of the people you will meet are those of a wide spectrum.
One of my earliest memories, I was in kindergarten, and a boy came up to me, and he said, "You're not a girl, you know?" And I said, "What do you, of course I am."
Oh, I came out as bi, and then I came out as gay, and then I came out as trans. So bi and gay happened in college-ish, and then trans was a few years ago.
I was 13 when I began to identify as a male. It was halfway through 2015, I think.
4 or 5, something like that. Just felt different.
I was 5 years old when I realized that I'm a guy, and I realized that everyone else treated me differently. So I didn't ask my adopted family. I actually went looking for answers, trying to figure out what made boys and girls' bodies differently. I am visually impaired, so I couldn't see what made things different.
We were helping out the middle school LGBTQ club, and one of the kids there was transgender, and he was like 11 or 12 or something like that. And that kind of got me thinking, like, maybe I'm transgender.
We think that there's 2 times that gender dysphoria is very clear. The science is converging. One is very, very early, 2, 3, 4 years old. That group is very, very clear from the very early age on, and those are the ones that are very easy to use puberty blockers on. Evident from very early on, unwavering. You know, mommy, I'm a boy. Daddy, I'm a girl. Mommy, it's like very clear. And those are unwavering. And when they hit puberty, there are increasing depression. They just are mortified.
All of a sudden, just kind of clicked, and I said, "Well, I think I might be a girl."
For many transgender people, their own body has become a prison. Gender dysphoria is defined as a condition of feeling one's emotional and psychological gender identity as different to that assigned at birth. Most transgender individuals experience a great deal of distress over the misassignment and are driven to find ways to transition. Unfortunately, the price of reassignment surgeries, hormone treatments, and counseling can be cost prohibitive. Although not everyone desires medical transitioning, the consequences of no treatments can be emotionally and psychologically devastating.
I was 12 going on 13 years old, and before that I had a belief that it was a mistake, and during the puberty period I was going to morph into a male and everything is going to be all right. Between 12 and 13 I saw my breast growing and nothing was actually growing in here, and I realized that no, it's not going to happen and I'm not going to morph into a guy. The night when I realized that, I grabbed the scissors that I had on the table and I started punching myself into the veins because I had no idea how to cut the veins. How do you slit your wrist to die?
And I remember when puberty hit, and it was the worst moment there were so many moments of it being the worst, but I felt so betrayed by my body and so betrayed by things beyond my control.
A child should be allowed to be who he or she is as soon as he or she is able to express it. As far as hormones go, I think that sometimes if a child is really, really dedicated to the idea of having maybe surgery or really doing some intervention measures later, then they will start, and I know that they did this for our friend, they will start things like birth control pills and stuff so that they don't have to go through having a period every month and so forth, especially. It's kind of traumatic if you really don't feel like this is your skin.
The hormone that they have that stops puberty is a great first step, because if you have the wrong body, the worst thing that can happen to you is a puberty that you don't want.
If you are pretty sure that as you're unfolding, it's seeming more and more like you probably are going to be in this transgendered grouping of individuals, then you might want to stop the puberty process by using puberty blockers from, let's say, 12 to 14 years of age and so forth. And then the second phase, so there are a couple of different phases. The puberty blockers would be the first, and then, of course, you would give other hormones after that if you want to have hormones that are compatible with their psychological gender rather than their natal gender.
To come forward as a transgender person takes an amazing amount of courage. Historically, society has not been accepting of transgender people, and they have experienced high rates of unemployment, homelessness, discrimination, suicide, and are victims in brutal murders, especially trans women.
Transgender people have been around since the beginning of time, but unearthing an individual history is difficult to obtain and often open to misinterpretation. Though the term transgender is new, people who have defied gender conformity have existed throughout human history. There are cultures that recognize more than two genders. Some Native Americans believe in people who are gifted by having two spirits, that of a male and female. These people were considered the visionaries, the healers, and the caregivers. Some identify as transgender, while others do not. German physician Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld was an early pioneer in transgender rights. He coined the term transvestite and later transsexualism to describe those with a difference between biological sex and identified gender.
Christine Jorgensen was the first famous American transsexual. She made headlines in 1952 when she had genital conversion surgery in Denmark.
She was a high celebrity, so everyone could relate to her.
What really happened that night at Compton's cafeteria has been all but forgotten. It wasn't a catfight between screaming queens. It was a riot, and it kicked off a new movement for human rights.
We fought for one cause. The cause that we fought for was for individual rights for freedom.
The riot at Compton's was an unsung episode in that momentous shift.
We decided to fight back because we were tired of being harassed by the police or to be used as scapegoats, as being called derelicts and degenerates.
The increasing harassment and police raids on gay bars in the 1960s resulted in the Stonewall riots of 1969, which became a stepping stone for the mounting sexual civil rights movement. Middle-class gay men who better fit the social norms of the time became the face of the movement, leaving many behind.
I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way?
The late 60s brought on new hormone therapies that helped transgender people better fit into society. It also saw the first gender-confirming operation in Colorado performed by Dr. Stanley Biber, who would go on to perform more than 6,000 surgeries at Mount St. Raphael Hospital. Biber's surgeries gave Trinidad, Colorado the moniker of sex change capital of the world at the time. Arguably, the most significant factor in the development of the national transgender movement was the rise of the internet in the mid-90s. This connected people and allowed them to experiment with defining their gender. Since then, trans activism has seen many strides in honoring the rights of transgender people both socially and medically. There is still a long way to go as we develop a greater understanding of the complexity of our gender spectrum. There are many ways to look at gender that transcend anatomy. People can find themselves on many different places of the gender spectrum. Another way to look at gender is to take into account the biology, gender identity, gender expression, and how they come together in a variety of potentialities.
Many people do identify on a spectrum there, but like in a bell curve, like there's a group that are sort of in the center, but then they drift off to the sides in a concentration. I think the majority of people will identify in the gender binary, but it just turns out that there's many on spectrum.
It usually starts with, are you a boy or a girl? And if I was strictly, transgender in that respect, it would be easy to just be like, oh, I'm a boy. And people usually take that a lot better. But when you're non-binary, you have to explain, I'm not. I'm not a boy or a girl. I'm a mess of gender. I'm all of it and none of it.
The ways I've tried to explain my gender and my sexuality to my family and friends who don't really have all the information or are not deep in the community the way I am is that I identify as queer and I identify as a non-binary transmasculine trans person, and I use he and him as my pronouns.
It's hard to wrap your head around. I mean, to realize it for yourself is super hard, but then I'm sure to hear it from somebody to be like, I don't understand that because I don't feel that.
As far as my gender expression goes, if what we know is a binary between or between masculine and feminine, I'm definitely, we say masculine of center in the community. I'm an MOC person, which means that I do my best to present in a masculine way.
Research around what gender is has developed tremendously over 20 years. But at that time, it was much more binary understanding. So the treatments were really to help people be experienced by the outside world as their internalized gender, which was more understood as binary, male, female.
And most surgeons won't consider doing surgery, any sort of transsexual surgery, unless they have worked for a good 1 to 2 years with a psychologist in advance of doing the transgender surgery.
I regularly see a therapist to work through lots of different issues and work on gender issues and mostly how to communicate to others, because I know who I am, but I have to communicate to others in an effective way that doesn't feel aggressive or demanding.
It's pretty practical kinds of things, in terms of social skills to talk to people. I have them role play in the office as to how they might handle going to a boss and talking to a boss about some changes. We come up with a plan with baby steps. How can you make these tiny changes on a week-to-week basis, giving them homework assignments, things that I want them to do to kind of increase their comfort with their own bodies and how they're going to live as the other gender.
If somebody's alone in their feeling and they do talk to, share with me, I'll continue to see them and talk about what the medical parts of this are, but I really feel like exploring for themselves what is happening inside to allow their resilience to come forward. And I'll just hold them there. They can always come in to see me. I will see them as the gender they present to me.
I believe trans people, if society were different, would not need counseling. Most would not need counseling. There is a trauma for people who are so gender incongruent with their body that's a trauma, and they need to work through that, and that requires some counseling. I believe that transgender people have issues like anybody else. I believe everybody should go to counseling at different points along their life. It's a little like dental hygiene. You can get by with not going to counseling, but it'll bite you somewhere down the road.
There's the Gender Identity Center that I know of. And from there you can get basically all the information you could possibly ever want.
They've contributed a lot to not only my transition, but to many others. I'm actually on the board of directors there, so I get to see how the nonprofits work, and they're just doing amazing things. Also, the GLBT Center of Colorado has made some great strides.
There's always a few people there who are veterans of it, who have gone through it themselves and can answer questions.
The people who come here usually have issues surrounded shame, stigma, fear, based on what society's told them. Society is not friendly. They've been told that that it's their fault, and there's a great deal of fear. Unfortunately, that requires a lot of counseling. They need to come out. How hard it is to have to come out about something that should be very natural.
You know, when I work with patients, you know, I let them know that it's going to be a constant coming out process. You know, it's not that you sit down with your family one time and describe, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. It is going to be an ongoing unfolding over time with each person that is a family member that means something to you.
When I came out to my parents, that was when I was the most panicked.
It's especially scary to come out as trans. Takes a lot of balls to tell people you don't want balls, believe me.
My parents haven't dealt with it. They seem to think that this is a phase, and they constantly tell me that this is very hard for them to deal with.
The worst experience was with my mother, whom I love very much. And my coming out resulted in tremendous amount of violence, where she believed, again, she felt honor-bound to straighten up the soldier. It resulted in a lot of physical violence, where she would beat me so much, both of us would be breathless.
She used my old name. She was like, well, this doesn't make sense because Chris never acted like a fag growing up. And I just was sort of taken aback by when she had said that and was hurt. And but then as the years have gone on, up to present day, she is now saying she and referring to me as Melissa. And she still denies that she ever said that. But she's like, well, if I did, you know, we can just, I'm sorry, and, you know, let's move on.
My aunt, she spent a week with us recently, and I told her that I was transgender, but she's like, oh, I'm too old to get that, and she pretty much refused to go by the right pronoun.
A few of them will call me Christopher or Chris. Most of them use female pronouns in my birth name, and that I equate that to the equivalent of taking my heart out, squeezing it really hard, and then just dropping it back in. I mean, it's very painful.
I didn't want to know what their reactions were, so I moved away.
I told myself the entire time we was married, I was like, okay, if we get divorced, that's it. I'm going to stop lying to myself. I'm going to come out. I'm going to do this. I cannot take this anymore. And then one day, after a lovely spaghetti dinner, which I made, it was delicious. Fuck yeah, it was delicious. I made it. She sat me down, she looked at me and she said, Jordan, are you happy? And me, being the loving husband, was like, fuck yeah, I'm happy, babe. What are you talking about? Football, barbecue, NASCAR. It was, my man, of course I'm happy. Blah. And she said, well, I'm not happy, and I got an apartment. I'm moving out at the end of the month, and I want a divorce. And I tell you what, you guys, I went to bed that night in a separate bedroom, and I started bawling my eyes out. Not because I was getting divorced, but because I had to start buying shoes. Are you kidding me? I was excited. That was like the best news of my life. It was like, I'm getting divorced. And like a week later, I was seeing a specialist in gender therapy. And a month after that, I was on hormones. And I was like, I went into it full throttle.
Dating's probably been my worst experience, honestly. The amount of guys that say, oh, sorry, I'm not interested in dudes whenever I tell them I'm trans. The amount of guys that say that they're just not into that kind of fetish. As many guys as want. Well, every once in a while you'll find a guy who actually wants to, hook up or anything like that. And usually they just want me to be on top. And that's... No. And a lot of guys just kind of see me as like a walking dildo.
Very first date I went on after years of trying. I met him through a trans dating site. So he knew right away. I'm very open about that. And we went and we had dinner and we had good rapport. And then he started getting a little too sexual. with it. And when I declined his advances, he left in the middle of the date while I went to the bathroom. Came back to the table, he was gone. Left me with the check. So dating has been rough. I'm, like I said, I'm very open with who I am, and I find that it's difficult for a straight trans woman to date men without them thinking that there's something wrong with them.
In the actual relationship that I began with, she was more curious about the lesbian side of things, and she classified as straight, and she mostly dated men. And when she met me, I wasn't in transition, but I still looked pretty male, I guess butch, and that was very interesting to her, and it intrigued her. She was behind it the whole time until I started looking more male and more masculine. She kind of just confessed that she wanted to be with a feminine female.
I haven't had that many experiences in dating, and I don't really think of it all that much as you would expect from a teenager. I've dated a couple times and they haven't been the most amazing experiences. I mean, I dated one girl for a year or something. We broke up like a week ago, I think. And it was during the point when we were dating that I told her that I was transgender, and I kind of expected her, I guess, to back off a little bit, but she didn't, and that was very nice, and that helped a lot.
In my particular case, with not ever being in a relationship or having someone, find me attractive or whatever, it was like, oh my gosh. At the time I was 41, and I'm like, it's like never being on a date or whatever. I'm kind of like, it really got to me, because I was just like, am I gonna spend the rest of my life alone?
Dating girls was extremely hard because straight girls, most of the time that I got, would think that now they're lesbians, or they would worry about how they would tell their parents or how they would approach it. And then with lesbians, they would pretty much just, as soon as I would talk to them, say, back away because I like girls or I'm a lesbian. And then, but I attracted men constantly.
I would very much love to get married, because I've been through so much. Would love just to be able to settle down, to maybe adopt kids if that were to work. But I also have to kind of come to terms that, at least in our day and age, that people are okay with trans people as like maybe coworkers or classmates or friends. But when it starts crossing into relationship, there still is that.
Meeting girls face to face is extremely difficult, because they could get an attraction to you, and then when you actually tell them, they either disappear, or they say some mean words, or they're cool with it, but you're in a friend zone afterwards.
It sucks not dating. I've tried dating. I've gone to all the online sites. I hit eHarmony, Plenty of Fish, Match.com, fucking Christian Mingle, J-Date, Black People Meet, Farmers Only, no bites. No bites, unfortunately. I tried finding a trans dating site, but I kept getting links to car repair places. I don't... Well, that works. No, I got my oil changed. That was about it. Pet boys are really nice. It's cool. Getting laid isn't the problem, though. I can get laid. There are people who want to go for transsexual people, which is fine. It's easy. All I have to do is talk to this dude, Craig. He has a list. He's smooth up in ya. I could do it. I don't often go for Craigslist because there's a lot of creeps and pervs and comedians on Craigslist. I don't go for that. I would never date a comedian. I would never date a comedian.
Don't call me a she-male. Don't call me a he, she. Don't call me any of those things that you see in porn. I'll slap you, like, right away.
The problem is, you've already got a small population because you're visually impaired. But then it becomes even smaller over a minority characteristic with you being in the LGBT community, and it's very hard to say, hey, I'm out, I'm here.
I have passing privilege, which means that most of the time strangers will see me as male. They'll think that I'm cisgender, not trans. Not always, but sometimes. So that means that I can be a lot less nervous when I meet someone new, that they're going to use the right pronouns, they're going to accept my name, they're not going to be a total jackass just because. Before that, there were a lot of cases where, you might be assaulted in a public restroom. I've been harassed at public places, at shops, casinos, restaurants. It's not fun.
I hate the word tranny. I've been called every name under the sun. I've been called tranny, she-male, lady boy, freak. That's just the other comedians.
One time at work, after I was coming out of the women's bathroom, a guy was there and he asked me if women were afraid that a pervert was using the bathroom. And I had my stupid little quip, which I shouldn't have said it, but I asked him if I wanted to work with a dick, I'd keep it. And I wrote to HR, and he eventually got fired because of that. But just the stupid things that people say when they don't understand is the hardest part before, during, and after transition.
My father was a dissident, and he wanted me to grow up in a free country. So it took me a long time to come here, but I really wanted to live in the free world. Russia was a place, communistic Russia, was very restricted. At the time, I really wasn't running away from the fact that nobody would accept me as a man, but basically for a whole bunch of injustices and all kinds of political reasons.
When I meet someone new, I usually expect hate or prejudice or something like that. So I get kind of nervous around people, usually.
Just got really heavily involved in the church because I was like, wow, this place actually, it's a learning experience, but they seem to accept my identity. So I was able to attend women's activities, was able to attend the women's retreat in 2013.
I'm a minister here at a church. One of our parishioners is transgendered, but she's so much more than that. She's an artist, she's an engineer, she's a photographer, she's articulate, she's generous. So I think of her transgendered identification as an aspect of who she is, but she's this amazing, wonderful human being. I talked to her this morning. She said, what I love about the church is they just treat me like another human being. It's kind of a non-issue at our church. She's participated in our retreats, our women's retreats, fully part of the community. She serves on committees. And participates fully in the life of the church.
I got an email from Karen saying, oh, Jim wants to meet with you. Now, didn't expect anything. Went there on September the 3rd, and beforehand just was in a really good mood. It was a 6-page letter that he read, and the first part was just kind of going over how we met, and then within the context of the letter, just saying that he had felt that he had not served me well as his pastor. He was starting to liken my situation to that of the eunuchs in the Bible. Basically, it was just kind of saying that what you have done is sinful, and that your biological DNA says that you're male, even though I've never had a chromosome test done. You're living an effeminate life and that you need to go back to your reality-based male gender. He had said that, you're still very much welcome here at Flatirons, that if you decide not to repent and to continue living your life as a woman, that you'll still be very much welcome, but you will not be allowed to attend any women's activities. And I asked him, well, if I can't attend the women's, where would someone like me go? And they just had no response.
In our denomination, we say God is still speaking and that the Spirit is still alive. And so there are more truths to be known and to be revealed.
We have people who come to Vanguard that are transgender. They are bisexual. They are homosexual. They are lesbian. Matter of fact, there's a lesbian couple that I greet every week. They come through the door. I don't attempt to change what I believe when I speak, but I do attempt to be sensitive to how it affects people. And it is very important to me that I go the extra mile to let them know that God loves them just as much as He loves me. Is a person born transgendered? I try not to answer questions the Bible doesn't answer, because my job is to be a spokesman for God's Word. The Bible doesn't address the question, so the answer is I don't know.
Going through a process of being transgendered, and then that's what's going to lead you to a sense of wholeness, a sense of integrity, and a sense of clarity about who you are.
We had a complete row of transgender people who came together. They sat together, and one of them said to me, I got in a conversation with him. It was a male that dressed as a female. And he said that he believed that God made him this way so that he could identify with people who dealt with the same issue so that he could reach them for Jesus Christ. It was a fascinating conversation.
Become who you're called to be is powerful to me. And so I embrace those who've walked that journey, and they teach me something about courage and strength.
I think we live in a society that has embraced the concept of tolerance. Okay? And anyone who doesn't embrace the concept of tolerance is perceived either as uneducated, bigoted, or hostile. Okay? I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with that, except it eliminates the ability to disagree publicly. And so what I perceive we're creating in our society is public assent and private hypocrisy.
I have been suicidal since I was 12. And it was really, really hard. And there's all these programs that I wish had been available to me when I was that age.
It'd be so much easier if I weren't around. Easier for everybody else, easier for me, because I wouldn't have to be here anymore, and I wouldn't have to, what I feel like I was doing was suffer. I wouldn't have to suffer anymore. And I couldn't exactly pinpoint why I was suffering so much, but I was.
And I got to a point after years of isolation and constant bullying where I didn't want to be here anymore. And I'm so hated, and I hate myself, and everyone else hates me too, that why should I even be here? I was about 15 years old when I put a gun to my mouth. And I was pulling that trigger very, very slowly. And when I blinked, I saw my mom. I saw a vision in my mind of my mom walking into that basement and seeing her baby all over the wall.
And I pulled that gun out of my mouth and I set it down and I said, you know what? I don't matter to me, and everybody else out there hates me. But I matter to my mom. And I can't do this to her. And so I didn't.
Over 40% of all trans people attempt suicide. And that's for both trans men and trans women. The stats are very, very similar for both.
In particular, they go down with two things. They go down with reassignment and they go down with community. In other words, family acceptance. So that's why I have to go down those two roads. You go down supporting families. That's why I spent so much time on the family side, and they go down with alignment.
You know, I was living in New York City, but I was sleeping on my couch because I didn't feel like I deserved to sleep on my bed. So like that sort of thinking was like, I don't deserve to sleep on my bed, I must sleep on my couch, was also sort of how I approached the world. Like I don't deserve to have friends or these interactions or know myself, and I should just sort of disappear. Like that is very drastic, but that's exactly my thought process.
Accept that you're trans, and to move past that and, you know, take care of that internalized transphobia, to love yourself. That was probably really the hardest part of transitioning, is learning to love yourself.
Just knowing that people are out there that care, and knowing that things are going to get better. Like, that's just kind of, just try to hold on to that. Never lose hope. No matter what your circumstances are, they cannot possibly be the circumstances worse than people who are falsely imprisoned right now, people Amnesty International fights for. Just for you to gain some courage. There are worse situations, and my heart bleeds every time Advocate.com announces yet another transgendered person or gay person committed suicide because of lack of acceptance. Believe me, your circumstances are not as bad as they are right now in Middle East, where gay people are suppressed by the Islamic State, and so on and so forth. Here in this country, we can fight for our rights, and as soon as you step out of the family that may be holding you tight, or the school that may not allow you to do things, you will find support groups and you will find people like you. And committing suicide is never an option. You need to forge on. You need to continue on.
Not everyone has the privileges I do, and not everyone is as safe as I am. But we're working to make the world so that it will be. So I need you to please stick with us just a little bit longer. If you're in crisis, call the Trans Lifeline. Call any of the other suicide prevention crisis lines. Talk to a friend. Make a box. And in that box, put all the things that make you happy and remind you what you're fighting for. Put a picture of your best friend, your dog, your rabbit, your awards, the things that you love. And when you're feeling down, pull out that box and open it and remember these things.
November 20th, we have a Transgender Day of Remembrance celebration. I was a speaker this year, and after we lit a candle for each and every person who was violently murdered in the past year, we said how they were killed. And then I stood up in front of a church full of my transgender community and allies to give an inspirational speech. And I'm at the podium in front of a table with 294 candles lit in front of me, one for each of the lives of my people who were taken from this earth far too soon. Far too soon. 294.
The world is still a long way from being understanding of transgender people. Many lives have been sacrificed to get us to where we are today. Hopefully, in the near future, society can open its eyes and be truly welcoming of a person's gender identity.
I would say my transition is ongoing. It's a slow process, trying to figure out what I want and what makes me happy and what makes me comfortable, and also trying not to just like throw it into people's faces. It's a weird navigation because I'm doing this for me, and I'm doing it so I can be happy, but I don't want to like abruptly throw my new self and my new life in front of everybody, because it's an adjustment for everybody around me, not just me.
Just don't be afraid of, what the future is going to hold, because things are really looking up, I think, for the transgender community. It doesn't seem like much, but, baby steps.
A lot of publicity for LGBT issues on the media is always good. There is no such thing as bad publicity. I believe that Caitlyn Jenner, no matter what they say, is a champion for our causes. She's a beautiful woman. And there's a whole bunch of other people too. Publicity is always good, because if we do not talk about the issues, then we are going to turn into a country like Russia, or most of Middle East for that matter, where you sweep under the rug what you don't care about and you don't understand. With education and the publicity, the people start understanding that he or she is not a freak. It's just a different kind of human, just as normal as you. It's just their preferences are different and they want to look different, but that doesn't mean that they deserve to be put into a psychiatric ward or in prison or something else.
If you can transplant these kinds of organs, could you transplant other kinds of organs? Could you transplant, for instance, a uterus? Whoa, right? We think we could. We think we might be able to do that in science. So if you could do that, what would that mean for an individual who experienced herself as a female and didn't have a uterus and wanted to bear a child?
When we come away from it and they say, I will try and I will do my best, that's what counts. I'm not asking them to understand or feel it or be all about it. I'm just asking you to make an effort to acknowledge me.
If transgender is the term that's used for a person to say, I look at the world, the pink and the blue world, and I don't fit. If they're willing to be honest enough to say that, because I think that's the whole point, right? And so the question is, do we need to create another gender or agender or ungender, whatever terminology you want to use, or do we need to keep wrestling with the tension?
My hope is that transgendered people will find a place in society in which they are embraced, considered a full part of society, in terms of in the workplace, in their personal relationships, in their religious organizations, that the transgendered person is a full human being, would be my hope.
We exist, we're out here. Let us go to the bathroom. Stop killing us. We are people, to quote Laverne Cox. We are at a tipping point with it. It is a civil rights movement. And we're starting to get the recognition I think that we deserve.
And it's very different and very difficult. And that's why we have things like the Trans Lifeline, which is staffed by trans people, because, you need that perspective. So I just want to acknowledge how different it is and how hard it is, but that it's worth fighting through, and that it is going to be a fight, but we are going to get things better. You are going to grow up and be a real life trans adult, and you are going to at some point be very happy with yourself. And it's not an easy road, but it is absolutely worth it.
The experience has been, I think it's been a really positive one. I love how Jay can say, this is who I am, and this is who I want to be, and this is who I feel comfortable being. And I think that's an incredibly brave thing to do, especially at 14 or almost 14.
It'll be a non-issue. I mean, it'll be like, oh, you're transgender? Okay. And that'll be that. It won't be any more, oh my gosh, I've had surgery, da-da-da-da, It won't be any more of that craziness behind it. It'll just be, okay, you're transgender. That's not a big deal.
Could we be at an evolved state of society where we could look at a human and not see a gender, male, female, but just see a human. And maybe then people wouldn't feel trapped in their physiology or their anatomy.
Be yourself. Live the life you want and just go for it.
Give greater space to the spectrum that exists in all of us for sexuality and for gender and for presentation. And when we give each other the room to do that, the world is a much better place and people are way happier.
By speaking with and listening to the brave people who have shared their experiences, we have learned about their challenges in letting friends and family know that they are not who they wish to be. The troubles of facing prejudice and discrimination, the struggles of being non-binary or not strictly fitting into being either female or male.
I think for America, it's going to take time. We seem like we're really forward with this type of stuff, but we really aren't.
I believe people should get educated on it. I think it's very important because you should just know about what's going on with people. Like, at the end of the day, you don't know what people are going through. Maybe they want to live their life one way. It's hard enough for them to deal if they're in somebody else's body.
Well, respect, first of all, is a huge thing because a lot of people completely disrespect anybody in the transgender community.
So I think it's good to have an open conversation and to talk about, like, you know, the psychology, the biology behind it and all that stuff, and, you know, actually talk to people who know it, because, you know, I think that a lot of times people who aren't transgender talk more about it than people who are.
Honestly, at the end of the day, we're all here on this earth together, and we're all gonna leave it and hopefully go to the same places together. Yeah.